Hello and welcome back to the Emergency Management 101 discussion where we're talking about the toolkit that again simultaneously will build the presentation as well as some of the products that are customized. So with that said, this video we wanted to kind of walk through the presentation itself, the contents, and give you a bit of an orientation of the materials. As a reminder, any of these green tabs is where you do your customization, and then the rest of the products are what is customized that you would end up printing. Also, as a reminder, right, this talking points and instructor guide, we'd encourage you that as you go through the presentation, perhaps as you're watching this video, after you've customized your version, you come in here and you type in some of the notes that you don't want to forget to mention as you go through. With that said, though, we wanted to kind of orient you to the thought process, and again, with the idea being that this is geared towards newly elected officials, generally at the local level, but sure could be state officials or anyone else, as well as new folks to the profession itself, new emergency managers, new stakeholders, perhaps new partners, any of that will orient them, A, to the profession, and then B, to the way you do it in your state and a little bit your jurisdiction. So with that said, we start out with kind of an intro section, welcome and introductions, administration, objectives, modules, and then the handouts that we've determined that we'll include. Again, we tried to include some fairly generic pictures throughout that could be generally most places, but if they don't fit, like we showed in the other video, you certainly can insert image in cells and find a new one if you're so inclined. From there, we go into the blue sky side of emergency management, sort of the day in the life, and it kind of just walks you through, again, pulling in various pieces of information as you have customized it. In any of these, most of them are just generic text, and so if you don't like some of this stuff, you can just change it up. Add in your kind of information if you need to beyond the customization that again sinks in. We walk through kind of the all hazard approach. Some of this, right, again, flowing in from what you selected up front to, again, kind of personalize it a little bit. A lot of the generic stuff that we pull in from various FEMA documents, other state documents, other best practices, to, again, sort of tell the story of our cycle in some layman terms. Grants and finance, again, some pieces here of how this could go together. And as an example, on the talking point, slide 13, maybe you add some recent statistics about your particular state that you received X dollars or they went to Y jurisdictions or whatever it may be. And again, various levels of kind of tweaking can go right here as talking points. We run into generically what a risk assessment is. We talk a bit about preparedness, all those left of bang activities on the proverbial timeline. Then we shift gears. If your agency has both missions, sort of the man-made and the all-hazard, if you will. I know we're mixing some terms there, but I think you get the idea. More of the nefarious actors. And for us, right, critical infrastructure falls under that. Sure, it could be impacted on the all-hazard or natural disaster side, but we're utilizing that in sort of this homeland security, protective, core capability type approach. Same with the Fusion Center. As you type in on the front, it'll bring in your logo, your graphic, your name, some of that. We talk a bit about cybersecurity here, and then we shift gears over to response, which really becomes kind of the gray sky environment, the disaster mode, and talk through, again, some principles that may be applicable to, again, newly elected or newly appointed officials or such. Walk through the consequences, the ICS basics, command versus coordination, and how we do that at the local level and the state level. Pull in the ESFs, and so, for example, if you don't use ESFs, you can change this out a little bit, rename it to whatever you do, put in some stuff here, and again, you can, most of this is put together with just merging and unmerging cells, so if you need to kind of tweak or customize in here, you sure can just merge, unmerge, drag, drop, etc. Talk a little bit about common operating picture based on the FEMA lifelines, mutual aid, and again, you can see some of this pulls in to, again, customize, and then the generic stuff is, well, fairly generic. Go through some of the crisis communications, disaster declarations. Again, if you have something in particular that's unique to you, you could customize it up front or copy and paste, right? Yep, we're going to edit it. We know it's not a good idea. There we go. And so you can see how you can add some stuff and move your things around a little bit if needed. Some of the state support, right, again, fairly generic, but if you needed to tweak those, you could. FEMA support, again, what we're looking at and talking through how we, it's not a guarantee, right? Those myths of FEMA will buy me a new house, Red Cross will build me a new house, etc. This is a good place where you can kind of dive into what the real expectations are. A little bit of COOP, and then we get into some recovery stuff. Stay fairly high level with some of the recovery graphics from FEMA and partners, talk a bit about short term, the RSFs, and then as we get into that long term, with a little bit of a brief case study on Greensburg, Kansas. And if you're not familiar with that, I'd encourage you to look it up. You can see this is the immediate after effect, and then in there, sort of rebuilding, reforming the community, did some spectacular stuff with thinking through long term what they're looking at. A little more on long term, and then we start getting a bit customized with Wyoming, in our case, right? If you typed in whatever you typed in on the start here, that would show up to give you a state perspective. This, again, fairly generic photo, like we showed earlier. You can change these out if you want by just insert and going from there. The blah is a reference up front, where again you could customize this one up on the front page. FEMA federal guidance, these are again pulling in based on that local jurisdiction. And so again, if you're delivering it to, say, the governor, you can put in your state level data on that first page. These pull in as bullet points, and it could be you're not using all of them. It'll hold that many, and if you don't need them, you can simply just come in and hit delete to clean up your slides just a little bit before you print them to final. Other key information, again, comes in from those front pages, and so if these don't apply to you, again, you can customize them up front. Or certainly customize them if you have another one back here that you need and say, boy, we do one more thing. We can put it in there, type in what you need, and again, make the slides your own fairly easily. Our Blue Sky organization, again, pulls from the front. And these little comments here, we tried to put them on the slides you particularly need to pay attention to. You can see there's 8 slides that you might want to do some double checking. Try to make it either customized up front or generic enough that it doesn't really matter, so to speak. But again, anywhere there's these 8 comments, it's a slide you might want to pay a little bit extra attention to. How you do gray sky or state EOC stuff, and again, these pull depending on what you call your state EOC. Some of the key partners, again, fairly generic, but you could come in here and write YDOT for Wyoming Department of Transportation, or if you don't call it Family Services, write in whatever it may be. So again, there's some sanity check before you just type it in here and hit print, but not much. We've tried to make it as efficient and streamlined as possible while telling your story. MOAD, National Guard, our trade association, which again, you could customize the photos on. Some local setups, which again are sort of generic, but there's a few custom points in here. Some of this, again, speaks to a lot of the places, but certainly if you're delivering to New York City, you probably don't need to talk about how some are part-time or that they may work through, a fire chief or a sheriff. So do a little bit of your due diligence. You can see where we have acronyms that are pulling from that front page. Some sample duties. Again, if you've got some unique stuff for your local area, you could tweak those. Any of the generic stuff you probably have to tweak on this page, right? The EM 101 presentation. Any of the specific stuff we would edit up here, because that again cross-cuts and applies throughout the toolkit. Some onboarding process, if you've got anything specific, again, it pulls in. Coordination, EOPs, or your emergency operation plan, the recommended training. And again, this could be customized a little bit. Local EOCs, local LEPCs, a little bit on the elected officials, what they should be thinking about and doing. State elected officials, this image is one of the few that again pulls from up front, so you can put a picture of your governor right in here, governor image, and that will zap over to here. Recent blue and gray sky examples, this again pulls in from up front, and so again, if you've got some highlights you want to kind of be able to touch on, you can customize it there. This is the part I really kind of wanted to touch on. We wrap this up with a hypothetical gray sky scenario or exercise. We figured the county flood scenario was probably generic enough. You could tweak it, right? And then if you choose to do so, right, just come in here and change it to fire or tornado or whatever sort of fits your scenario. The questions we try to make fairly generic, and this is where, as a facilitator or an instructor, if you're using something other than flood, you should probably tweak the photos a little bit. But as you see, we kind of walk through preseason, maybe a month or two out, we're starting to see some stuff on the horizon, again, helping lead in, but knowing there's no notice events out there. You can help have some of that conversation, but get them talking, right? The front of the presentation is fairly lecture heavy. This back part should be more two-way dialogue and facilitation of the group. This brings us a little closer to the incident, right? We're talking coming days and pre-incident, and we ask a few more questions. We get right to that. It's happening. It's going to happen, and so you can talk through what are some of those decisions they need to think about, what are some priorities, what's some of your plan. Then we get to it's happening, right? We're seeing impacts, we're seeing water rise. Again, talk them through, facilitate the discussion. And then we get to the post, right? The cavalry's gotten back in their big diesel vehicles and ridden off into the proverbial sunset. And now what does recovery start to look like for you? This isn't a robust exercise. You can see 4 or 5 slides, but hopefully gets them talking and, more importantly, thinking, and some next steps that will take them out and get them discussing after you, the presenter facilitator, is on down the road. We wrap up with just, again, questions, closeouts, and next steps. And then, again, summaries, sources, some things you can do next steps. And this might be where we would hand out the little exam, talk them through how to fill that out. And again, not necessarily fill it out in class unless you just got a lot of extra time, but to have them take it home and take care of that. And then we leave with the contact information. Really briefly, I mentioned it in another video with custom colors, and we'd set this one up just so you can see. If you click on this first box and click the format, conditional formatting, we can change this fairly easy if you're a different color state. Yep, we don't mind editing it. And that will then change all those header bars throughout the document, each one of those sort of title headers. So with that, we'll just put that, let's skip out of there. Format, conditional formatting, right? And we don't need that one, we need this one. As you can see, you can customize it fairly heavily. You can make it bold, italics, whatever color schemes you would like. All right, so we'll wrap that video up. As always, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you reaching out, visiting We Prepare, and coming to become a better emergency manager. As always, do reach out to us if you've got other ideas, thoughts, questions, comments that you'd like to see farmed into this or other tools in the future. So with that, be safe. Thanks for coming and joining us, and happy trails. Take care. See you next time for kind of a final wrap up of the toolkit. Thanks.